Hello everyone, Vincent Teo from HDTV Test here. Today we are reviewing the Sony XH95, which is also marketed as the Bravia X950H in the USA. It is the highest spec 4K LED LCD in 2020 from the Japanese brand, featuring full array local dimming direct-lit LED backlighting, the company's currently most advanced X1 Ultimate video processor, X motion clarity black zonal insertion technology, HDR support for HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision, upgraded Acoustic Multi-Audio speaker system, as well as Android 9.0 Pie Smart TV platform. Our review sample is the 55-inch version, model number Sony KD-55XH9505, but the XH95 is also available in 49-inch, 65-inch, 75-inch and a massive 85-inch screen sizes. Note that the 55-inch and 65-inch XH95 now features X-wide-angle technology, whereas last year's 55XG95 and 65XG95 didn't, so we'll be paying close attention to the benefits and downsides of the viewing angle composition film employed by Sony this year. The design has a premium air about it. The bezel has shrunk even slimmer when seen from the front, encasing the semi-glossy LCD panel in a gunmetal grey frame with tasteful brushed metallic finish. The television is propped up on a pair of feet as thin as ice skating blades, which can be placed right at the edges or slightly inwards to be squeezed onto a smaller AV stand. The narrowing is not by much, but from experience, a few inches could make the difference between fitting or not. Of course, aesthetically, the XH95 looks better with the feet at both ends of the panel, since that's how the TV was designed according to Sony's Immersive Edge philosophy, where the stand sort of flows away and disappears when viewed from the front, allowing your eyes to focus on the display. Inspected from the sides, the chassis is bulkier owing to direct-lit LED backlighting, and there's a slight incline and wobbliness which we are not sure is intended, or just the way I slot things in. The connections are found on the left rear of the display, including 4 HDMI 2.0B inputs whose only HDMI 2.1 feature is EARC or Enhanced Audio Return Channel on HDMI 3. We are slightly disappointed that the clever cable management system found on previous Sony LED LCD televisions had to be abandoned for the premium blade design, but at least the company has supplied 2 plastic clips with the XH9505 to tidy up your dangling cables. Just like the outgoing XG95, the Sony XH95 uses the same MediaTek MT5893 chipset with 2.5GB of RAM. Despite a more colorful and detailed interface, navigation remains super responsive and smooth, even when jumping from one app to another in the Android TV home screen. Before I move on to talk about picture quality, I would like to thank Richer Sounds Manchester for sponsoring this video. If you are thinking about getting a new TV, even if it's not the XH95, please support this channel by considering buying from them. Call 0333 900 0086, mention HDTV Test, and you will receive great price and service. Thanks again for your support. The Sony KD-55XH9505 uses a VA-type LCD panel which traditionally delivers deep blacks by LED LCD standards, but suffers from narrower viewing angles, although of course there's X-wide angle technology on board to tackle this issue. Now, we can see the XH95's subpixel structure slightly clearer than that we captured on the ZF9 or Z9F we tested some time ago, suggesting that the viewing angle compensation film has been tweaked. If we move the focusing distance of our microscope, the film would come into view. Once peak white was aligned to 120 candelas per square meter on a 4x4 ANSI checkerboard pattern, native black level measured 0.043 candelas per square meter, which on paper is slightly shallower than the 0.03 candelas per square meter expected from the best VA panels, but at least not as bright as the 0.07 candelas per square meter measured on the ZF9. In practice, the black level of the 55XH95 did not look visibly inferior to other VA LCDs with 0.03 nits black. To a certain degree, we suspect that the backlight homogeneity imparted by X-wide angle actually equalizes the perception of black depth versus other 0.03 nits VA LCDs whose blacks and gamma would brighten off-axis. Now, I know some of you will claim that off-axis contrast and gamma shift doesn't concern you, because you always watch your TV straight on anyway. But even if you sit directly in front of the television, the sides of the screen will always hit your eyes at an angle, especially as televisions get bigger and bigger. We think the tweaked viewing angle composition film on the XH95 does a good job of improving VA-type LCD viewing angles and gamma uniformity across the entire screen without incurring any visually significant drop in perceived contrast. The Sony XH9505 is equipped with full array local dimming, and using our own custom-authored test pattern consisting of a small white box crawling horizontally and then vertically against the borders of a black background, we counted 6 vertical columns and 8 horizontal rows, giving us a total of 48 independently dimmable zones, which is the exact same number of local dimming zones found on the 55-inch models of last year's XG95, as well as the XF90 the year before. Having tested various TVs from all manufacturers who still produce full array local dimming or FALD LED LCDs in this day and age, I remain of the opinion that Sony has the best local dimming algorithm in the business, which seeks to maintain accuracy while keeping backlight fluctuations to a minimum. In this challenging scene from Gravity as Sandra Bullock is hurtling through space, the Sony XH95 produced a more stable image with less vignetting effect than Samsung's Q80T, which is also equipped with full array local dimming. However, even the most advanced local dimming software cannot fully compensate for a limited number of physical local dimming zones of only 48 segments. So in HDR mode, you may see blooming artifacts seeping into the letterbox bars from adjacent bright objects. Switching auto local dimming from the most accurate setting of medium to high would reduce the blooming, but also compress the highlights and shadow detail, thus deviating from accuracy, so it's not something we would advise. Instead, we recommend using some gentle bias lighting which can make letterbox bars look blacker and blooming less apparent. Of course, if you as a viewer want to see absolutely no blooming in a pitch black room, you would have to go with a self-emissive display technology such as OLED that boasts pixel-level light control. The FALD Samsung QLEDs come close, but they have to sacrifice shadow detail and luminance accuracy to achieve this. Using the Kalman for Bravia app, we unlocked the Custom for Pro 1 and Custom for Pro 2 picture presets featuring additional 20-point white balance controls. After calibration, average delta errors measured 1.28 on this demanding color checker SG chart where 140 color patches were measured, with only a couple of inaccuracies exceeding the humanly perceptible threshold of delta error 3. Overall calibrated color accuracy on our XH95 review sample was marginally worse than that we measured on the XG95. We are not sure whether it's just unit-to-unit variation or caused by the new X-wide angle film. But general colors, including skin tones in SDR content, still looked extremely natural and cinematic, partly because of accurate gamma tracking. Once correctly set up, Sony's motion handling remained best in class. Slow panning shots in 24 frames per second movies looked smooth without telecinic judder, and Sony's motion flow system didn't introduce as many interpolation artifacts or frame drops as motion-compensated frame interpolation from other brands. That said, there are still a few areas of improvements. 1. The default motion flow and film mode settings in the most accurate custom picture preset resulted in occasional tearing and stuttering on 50Hz scrolling news ticker, possibly due to misfiring cadence detection on mixed edits, especially in these unusual circumstances where various experts are video conferencing into news channels via Skype or Zoom using whatever frame rate they are filming at. Fortunately, these artifacts can be eradicated by disabling either motion flow or film mode. Also, while we are big fans of Sony's X-Motion Clarity black zonal insertion technology, which can boost motion resolution from the sample and hold baseline of 300 lines to 1080 lines or higher without causing significant brightness drop or flicker, the smoothness setting that's required to activate X-Motion Clarity would introduce noticeable interpolation artifacts and soap opera effect to 24p material, meaning that for the best outcome, users need to manually adjust motion settings separately for movies and sports. Due to the hassle, Most video enthusiasts would probably just end up keeping motion flow off, therefore missing out on the outstanding motion clarity available for watching sports. So it would be good if Sony can devise a way on future televisions for interpolation to be applied separately for low frame rate and high frame rate content. In terms of screen uniformity, our Sony KD-55XH9505 review unit was one of the cleanest we've seen among LED LCDs, exhibiting no obvious banding or dirty screen effect on full-field gray slides, although like many Sony LED LCD TVs, there's some slight darkening of all four corners. Note that our camera managed to capture some horizontal shadowing of the FALD grid, which wasn't visible in real life at all. Upscaling was superb, retrieving sharp and clean detail from this SMPTE RP133 test card in 576i without excessive ringing or junk pixels. Overscan can be disabled for standard definition content too, allowing the Sony XH95 to make a decent fist of even grubby channels. Gradation quality was already outstanding natively, and there's a smooth gradation decontouring filter that can smooth out in-content polarization even more, although because this feature could still scrub away some fine detail from time to time, even on the least aggressive low setting, some purists may prefer to switch smooth gradation off completely. During playback of Dolby Vision content, engaging smooth gradation is a definite no-no, since it behaved like a spatial filter that blurs out detail. For HDR, peak brightness hit 1200 nits on a 10% window after calibration and 710 nits full fill, driven by PFS phosphor as indicated by the spectral power distribution captured using our Jetty 1511 reference spectroradiometer. The Sony XH95 reached 93% of DCI-P3 and 71% of Rec 2020 in color gamut coverage. When it came to PQ-EOTF, which stands for Perceptual Quantization Electro-Optical Transfer Function, the Bravia XH9505 tracked the ST2084 standard very accurately before rolling off near its peak brightness of 1200 nits. As a result, high APL scenes from 4K Blu-ray movies popped with a tremendous level of HDR impact that simply cannot be matched by OLEDs which are hampered by automatic brightness limiter circuitry. Like all Sony TVs, the XH95 doesn't adapt its tone curve based on static metadata for HDR10 content. Instead, it relies on dynamic tone mapping to adjust the tone curve by analyzing the incoming video signal in real time. Now, Sony's tone mapping philosophy still favors preserving average picture level or APL and sacrificing some specular highlights over retaining all bright detail but darkening the picture, so some of the brightest highlight detail close to 4000 nits would appear clipped in spite of dynamic tone mapping. Like all Sony TVs with Dolby Vision support, the Bravia XH95 or X950H uses the low latency version instead of the full-fat hardware-based implementation adopted by almost every other TV manufacturer. Playing a variety of 4K Blu-ray discs through HDMI from two Oppo 203 players in comparison with another television displaying in HDR10, Dolby Vision presentation on the Sony XH95 delivered the pop and depth expected of dynamic metadata HDR, and didn't look obviously darker, although Sony's SDR to Dolby Vision calibration offset introduced a slight yellow cast in the more accurate Dolby Vision dark mode. When playing Dolby Vision through the internal Netflix app, we still saw some near-black polarization on a handful of Netflix titles, such as this scene from Okja, or this sequence from Daredevil, which in itself is a fairly dark show. For gaming, input lag measured in the low 20s for 1080p SDR and 4K HDR video signal once game mode was engaged. While these figures are not as low as some other TVs, the good news is that unlike on Samsung QLEDs, enabling game mode on the Sony XH9505 did not degrade local dimming to a significant degree, and even permitted full chroma bandwidth. Some gamers may prefer Sony's game mode approach of achieving great picture quality while keeping lag times at a still responsive 22 milliseconds. It's just a shame then that the company hasn't managed to implement various HDMI 2.1 gaming features, such as 4K at 120Hz, VRR and ALM on the X950H. Normally, in a TV review, I don't even bother commenting on sound, but the Acoustic Multi-Audio system on the Sony XH95 was quite impressive, so I thought I'd say a few words. Compared with its XG95 predecessor, the 55-inch, 65-inch and 75-inch XH95s feature a pair of egg-shaped full-range drivers called X-balanced speaker, bigger cabinets for deeper bass. The pair of side-firing tweeters are even closer to the edge with larger aperture. The speakers are now bi-amped. And you can acoustically optimize the frequency response using the microphone on the remote control, which is now backlit with light and motion sensor. The result is one of the more authoritative sound we've heard from an LED LCD television, delivering rich tonality, wide soundstage, and effective localization that matches up well with the picture on screen. Let's sum up. Compared with last year's XG95, the Bravia X950's key upgrades are wider viewing angles, superior sound quality, and a number of user interface improvements. From what we've seen on our 55-inch review unit, Sony has tweaked the viewing angle compensation film such that perceived contrast loss and blooming artifacts were not as bothersome as when XY angle was first introduced almost 2 years ago. Of course, I would have liked to see more local dimming zones for even better blooming suppression, particularly in HDR scenes. But as explained before, we have to accept that the days of non-Chinese manufacturers producing high zone count 4K LED LCDs are officially over, now that 4K OLEDs, which can control more than 8 million pixels independently of each other, can be bought at such a competitive price. The lack of various HDMI 2.1 gaming features is also a missed opportunity, what with next-gen consoles such as Sony's very own PS5 scheduled to arrive towards the end of 2020. Nevertheless, the Sony KD-55XH9505 still does enough to earn our highly recommended award with its class-leading motion and local dimming stability, as well as mesmerizingly impactful HDR thanks to high peak brightness and accurate PQ UTF tracking. If you have found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTV Test YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.